If you're parenting an autistic preteen or tween, this is often the age where things start to feel different. Not because kids are suddenly dating or having sex, but because their bodies are changing, their brains are changing, and they're starting to notice people in new ways. So, for autistic kids, that shift can feel pretty confusing pretty quickly if no one explains what's going on. So, this is that in between stage where childhood isn't quite gone, but it doesn't feel the same either. And a lot of parents sense that something's shifting, even if they can't quite put their finger on it. So, I want to talk about consent at this age, not in a scary way and not as a big, heavy talk. I want to talk about it in a way that fits how autistic brains tend to process information. And look, I'm coming at this as an autistic and ADHD adult myself, and someone who's worked in sexual health for a long time, and I'm also a parent as well. So I know how easy it is to second guess yourself at this stage. So we're going to slow this right down and make consent clearer for you. When parents hear the word consent, a lot of tension shows up straight away. So I want to say this clearly and simply. At this age, consent still is not about sex. It's about helping kids to understand the difference between noticing something in their body and acting on it. And preteens are dealing with new body sensations, new feelings, new curiosity, and a lot more social noise. And feeling something doesn't mean you have to do something with it as well. And noticing someone doesn't automatically make touching okay, too. And the consent rules still apply. They just need a bit of updating so they make sense for this stage of development. Around this age, bodies start doing new things. So you might notice body hair starting to grow, periods might be beginning, erections, vaginal lubrication and discharge, and there's a stronger awareness of some of the physical sensations that are in their body. And their brains too are also changing. And kids notice people differently. They might get stuck on certain thoughts. They might feel attraction or curiosity, or they might feel embarrassed and awkward without really knowing why. And for autistic kids, especially, this can be really confusing because the body can react before the brain, has any context to make sense of what's going on. And if no one explains that, kids can take those reactions very literally. And that's often where consent starts to get a little bit tangled up. Now, this is the idea I come back to again and again when I'm working with families. Attraction is not consent. Arousal is not consent either, and curiosity is not consent. Bodies can react without permission. Erections can happen just because the wind's blowing a certain direction. They don't always happen just because you're having sexy thoughts. So it's really important that kids know this. They need to know that it doesn't mean that anything's wrong with their body. It just means that their body's doing body things. It's doing what it's meant to do. Now, what matters is what we do next. And with autistic kids, often this needs to be said out loud because they're more likely to be literal, rule focused, and also uncomfortable with guessing what's going on. Many autistic preteens take body responses at face value. They assume feelings mean action, and they sometimes miss those subtle social cues as well. And they'll freeze instead of asking something, or they'll act quickly just to reduce that uncertainty when to fit in. And when no one explains what's happening, kids can panic, they can feel ashamed and think something's wrong with them, or make a guess instead of checking. And look, I do see this a lot in the families that I work with, and I remember it from my own experiences too of growing up. So calm explanations for me, would have made a big difference. Now, at this age, we want to normalize some things while keeping the boundaries really clear. So it's okay to notice attraction and to feel curious and to have questions, but it's not okay to touch someone without asking, to assume that interest means yes, or to touch someone to work out how you feel. That last one especially. Consent still looks like asking or waiting for a clear yes and stopping if there's any uncertainty. So this isn't about scaring kids. It's about giving them predictable rules that reduce anxiety for them. Now, at around this age, many preteens start touching their own genitals. So let's just keep this bit simple for now. We want them to know that touching your own body is okay and it's private, and it's also not naughty as well. So private places are the bedroom and the bathroom when there's no one in there with you, and when you also know that you aren't going to be interrupted as well. And it's about the same words, the same tone, and repeating this information calmly in an everyday way. So, this is still consent education because it's about teaching body ownership and clear boundaries. And clear rules, they actually reduce shame and reduce the risk as well. Crushes are very common at this age. And it's important to say clearly that just because other kids are dating doesn't mean that your kid has to as well. And this is also an age where kids are changing schools. They're moving towards high school. They're trying to work out who they are and where they fit in. It's like welcome to adolescence. So kids will also talk in ways that aren't always accurate. So they'll exaggerate, they'll brag, they'll repeat things they've heard, and sometimes they'll make things up to sound older and to fit in. So I think it's really important that our autistic kids, they will take these things literally and they'll feel that everyone's doing it. And that will feel very real as well. And they will copy a lot of what they're seeing because they think that that's what you have to do at this age to fit in. So, a part of consent education here is saying that you're allowed to go at your own pace. And just because someone says something doesn't mean it's true. And you don't have to do what others are doing to fit in. So, simple scripts can help, like, can I sit next to you? Or is it okay if I hold your hand? And remembering that silence or a no always means no. Now, a lot of parents worry that talking about this will encourage their kids to do something. And what I've seen over the decades is the complete opposite. Preparation actually reduces risk, and silence creates confusion. And with our autistic kids, they cope better when information's predictable, calm, repeated, and given before the panic hits. So getting it early is better. And this isn't about pushing them forward, it's about actually giving them a map to follow. So you don't need long talks, you just need short, repeatable phrases that work well. So phrases like feelings don't decide actions, bodies can react without permission, we always ask before touching, and you can always talk to me. These help to build safety over time. Puberty is often where shame quietly starts, not because kids did something wrong, but because no one explained what was happening. So, clear consent teaching here helps to prevent panic, reduce shame, and also helps to support safer relationships for later on. And look, you don't need one big conversation, you just need to start. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this. One clear sentence repeated calmly is enough. And this video it's a part of a wider consent series. And the next step builds on this foundation and looks at consent with teens. So if you need any backup, Sex Ed Rescue is there, so you're not figuring this out alone. And look, you're not behind. You're being thoughtful. You're watching this video. You're wanting to have these conversations. And that is what really matters.